You're sitting across from someone at dinner. They're smiling, nodding, making eye contact at all the right moments. They ask you how your day was. They laugh when you tell your story. To everyone watching, they seem perfectly fine, calm even, maybe calmer than most people you know. But here's what you can't see. Behind their eyes, there's nothing. No joy in the laughter. No curiosity in the questions. No connection in the conversation. They're performing humanity like an actor who's learned their lines so well they no longer need to understand what the words mean. This isn't anxiety disguised as calm. It's not depression wearing a happy mask. This is something far more unsettling, a psychological state where the storm isn't raging beneath the surface. Because there is no storm. There's no surface. There's just an empty stage where emotions used to perform. What if I told you that some of the calmest seeming people you know feel absolutely nothing inside? Not sadness. Not anger. Not fear. Just void. And what if I told you that this emptiness, this profound disconnection from their own humanity, might be one of the most terrifying psychological experiences a person can have? Today we're diving into the hidden psychology of people who appear calm but feel nothing inside. And by the end you might question whether the emotions you feel are as real as you think they are, or if you've been performing too. Let's start with a distinction that most people get wrong. When you think of someone who's calm, you probably imagine inner peace, meditation, emotional regulation. Someone who's mastered their feelings and achieved some kind of zen-like equilibrium with the chaos of existence. But there's another kind of calm, one that has nothing to do with peace. It's the calm of disconnection. The calm that comes not from feeling your emotions and choosing how to respond to them, but from feeling nothing at all. Psychologists call this emotional numbing or affective flattening, a state where your emotional range compresses to near zero. You don't experience the highs of joy or the lows of despair. You exist in a perpetual gray zone where nothing really touches you. From the outside, this looks like stability. You don't overreact. You don't cry at movies. You don't get visibly angry when someone wrongs you. You seem like the most level-headed person in the room. People might even admire your composure. They might say things like, "I wish I could be as chill as you." But inside, you're not chill. You're absent. Imagine this. You receive news that should devastate you. A breakup, a job loss, a death in the family. Your brain registers the information. You understand intellectually that this is something that should hurt. You've seen other people cry in these situations. You know what you're supposed to feel. But the feeling doesn't come. You wait for it. You search for it like feeling for a light switch in a dark room. But there's nothing there. Just a cognitive awareness that something bad has happened, coupled with a strange, hollow confusion about why you can't seem to care. This is the paradox at the heart of emotional numbness. You can't feel, but you can notice that you can't feel. And that awareness, that meta-level consciousness of your own emptiness, becomes its own unique form of torture. The ancient Stoics talked about achieving ataraxia, a state of serene calmness and emotional stability. But they meant something entirely different. Stoic calm came from understanding your emotions, accepting them, and choosing not to be controlled by them. It was an active process. What we're talking about is passive. It's not control, it's absence. It's not mastery, it's amputation. The person sitting across from you at dinner hasn't transcended their emotions. They've lost access to them entirely. And the terrifying part? They might not even know how it happened. So how does someone end up in this state? How does a human being, an animal literally wired for emotional response, whose survival depends on fear, joy, anger, and connection, become emotionally blank? The answer lies in one of the brain's most powerful defense mechanisms: dissociation. Dissociation is what happens when your psychological system determines that reality has become too overwhelming to process. It's your mind's emergency exit. When the fire alarm goes off and there's no safe way out through the door, your consciousness finds another route. It leaves your body behind and retreats somewhere safer. This usually begins with trauma. Let's walk through a scenario. Imagine you're a child and something terrible is happening to you. Abuse, neglect, violence, something your developing brain has no framework to process. The emotional pain is so extreme that if you felt it fully, it might fracture you completely. So your brain does something extraordinary. It separates the experience from the feeling. You become an observer of your own life. You watch what's happening to you from a distance as if it's happening to someone else. The memory forms, but the emotional content gets filed away, locked behind a door you don't have the key to. Psychologists call this peritraumatic dissociation. Dissociation that happens during the traumatic event itself. And here's where it gets complicated. Once your brain learns this trick, it doesn't forget it. Dissociation becomes a reflex. A coping mechanism so effective that your nervous system starts using it not just for major trauma, but for everyday emotional discomfort. Someone criticizes you? Dissociate. Relationship conflict? Dissociate. Feelings of vulnerability? Dissociate. Over time, this protective mechanism becomes a prison. You've trained your brain to shut down emotional experiencing so reflexively that you can no longer access feelings even when it's safe to do so. Even when you want to. The neuroscience here is fascinating. Brain imaging studies show that people experiencing dissociation have altered activity in several key regions. Reduced activation in the amygdala, your emotional alarm system. Decreased connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and limbic system. The thinking brain and feeling brain can't talk to each other. And sometimes hyperactivation in areas responsible for self-monitoring and observation. Your brain has essentially rewired itself to observe rather than experience. To narrate rather than feel. Think about that for a moment. Your consciousness, the thing that makes you, has split into two parts. The part that experiences life and the part that watches from a safe distance. And gradually, the watching part becomes so dominant that the experiencing part withers away. You become a spectator in your own life. From the outside, this looks like calm. You're not reactive. You don't have emotional outbursts. You seem remarkably stable in situations that would overwhelm others. But it's not strength. It's absence. It's like admiring someone for not screaming while their house burns down, not realizing they've gone deaf and can't hear the fire alarms. And here's the cruelest part. The people around you reinforce this pattern. They praise your calmness. They lean on you in crisis because you never fall apart. They tell you how mature you are, how emotionally intelligent. So you learn to wear your numbness like armor. You learn that disconnection keeps you safe, not just from trauma but from disappointment, from rejection, from the fundamental vulnerability of being human. Until one day you realize you can't remember the last time you felt anything real. And you're not sure if you're protecting yourself anymore, or if you've just disappeared. Now let's go deeper. Because some people don't just struggle to feel emotions, they struggle to even identify or describe them. Meet alexithymia, a condition where you literally cannot recognize or articulate your emotional states. The word comes from Greek a without, lexis words, thymos emotions. Without words for emotions. But it's more than just a vocabulary problem. People with alexithymia have a fundamental disconnect between their physiological emotional responses and their conscious awareness of those responses. Imagine your body is speaking a language your mind can't understand. Your heart races. Your stomach tightens. Your palms sweat. Your body is clearly having an emotional response to something. But when someone asks you, "What are you feeling right now?" you draw a complete blank. Not because you're repressing the emotion. Not because you're in denial. But because the signal never makes it from your body to your conscious awareness. The message gets lost in translation. Studies suggest that about 10% of the population experiences significant alexithymia, though many more exist on a spectrum. It's more common in people with trauma histories, autism spectrum conditions, and certain neurological differences. Let's make this concrete. Picture this scenario. You're in a meeting at work. Your boss criticizes a project you've been working on for months. Everyone's looking at you, waiting for your response. A neurotypical person might feel embarrassment, anger, defensiveness, hurt, pride. They might not express all these feelings, but they'd at least be aware of them churning inside. But if you have alexithymia, you feel something. Some kind of physical sensation. Maybe tension in your chest. Maybe your face feels hot. But you can't name it. You can't locate it. When someone asks if you're okay, you genuinely don't know how to answer. You know something is happening in your body. But the emotional content is completely opaque to you. This creates a bizarre existence. You're constantly performing emotional intelligence based on observation rather than experience. You learn that when X happens, people typically feel Y, so you respond in Z way, not because you feel Y but because you've learned the script. Someone shares good news? You smile and say, "Congratulations," because that's what the situation calls for, not because you feel happiness for them. Someone tells you about their tragedy? You make a sympathetic face and say, "I'm so sorry," because you've learned that's the appropriate response, not because you feel empathy. You're essentially running human interaction software without the emotional hardware to support it. And here's what makes this particularly lonely. You can see that other people have something you don't. You watch them connect over shared feelings. You see them cry together, laugh together, bond over emotional experiences. And you're on the outside, pressing your face against the glass, understanding intellectually that something important is happening but unable to participate in any authentic way. Some people with alexithymia describe it as living in a world where everyone else can see in color and you can only see in grayscale. You can describe the world accurately. You can function. But you're missing a fundamental dimension of human experience. The calm you project isn't peace, it's bewilderment. It's the stillness of someone who's trying desperately to figure out what frequency everyone else is tuned to, and why you can't seem to find it. And perhaps most tragically, you might not even know that your experience is different from others. You might assume everyone else is also just performing emotions, following social scripts, faking their way through connection. You might think the whole world is secretly as numb as you are, and everyone's just better at pretending. This brings us to one of the most unsettling aspects of emotional numbness: the performance. When you can't feel emotions authentically, you learn to simulate them. You become a method actor in the theater of your own life, studying human behavior and replicating it without the internal experience that's supposed to drive it. Psychologists call this social masking or compensatory strategies, essentially faking emotional responses convincingly enough that no one notices something's missing. And many people become extraordinarily good at it. Think about how you learn to interact as a child. Most people learn through feeling. You feel happy when your parent smiles at you, so you smile back. You feel scared when they're angry, so you learn to soothe them. Emotion leads to behavior. But what if you don't have reliable access to those feelings? Then you learn differently. You learn through observation and pattern recognition. You study people like an anthropologist studies a foreign culture. You take notes on what responses generate positive outcomes and what generates negative ones. Cry at a funeral. Positive response, people comfort you, you're seen as appropriately grief-stricken. Don't cry at a funeral. Negative response, people think you're cold, you're judged as unfeeling. Conclusion: cry at funerals even if you have to force it. You build a database of appropriate responses. You learn the emotional vocabulary, not because you feel the emotions but because you've noticed that people who use words like, "I feel hurt," or "that makes me anxious," get better outcomes in conflicts than people who don't. Your social interactions become a series of calculated performances. Each one requires active cognitive effort because it doesn't flow naturally from genuine emotional experience. Imagine having to consciously think through every social interaction the way you might think through a complex math problem. Every conversation is exhausting because you're running constant background calculations. What should I feel here? How would someone who feels that express it? Is my facial expression matching my words? Am I making the right amount of eye contact? Is my tone appropriate? Most people do this unconsciously, guided by authentic emotional responses. For you, it's manual. Every single time. And here's the kicker, you get good at it. You might become so good that you're perceived as more emotionally intelligent than people who actually feel things, because you've studied it so carefully. You know exactly what to say in difficult situations because you've memorized the scripts, not because you're accessing genuine empathy. You might become the friend everyone comes to with their problems, because you don't get overwhelmed by emotional contagion. You can listen to someone's trauma without falling apart yourself. Not because you're strong, but because their pain doesn't actually penetrate your emotional numbness. People might describe you as wise, or mature, or grounded. They might say you're the calmest person they know. And you are. Because calm is all you have. But there's a cost to this constant performance. It's called emotional labor, the work of managing your emotional presentation. And when you're doing it without the underlying emotional experience to guide you, it's exponentially more exhausting. At the end of a day full of social interaction, most people feel drained. But you feel something else. You feel like you've been playing a character for hours and you can finally drop the mask. You can stop performing humanity and just be nothing. Be blank. Be the emptiness that's actually there when no one's watching. And sometimes, late at night when you're alone, you might wonder, if I'm performing emotions rather than feeling them, am I even a real person? Or am I just a very sophisticated algorithm that's learned to mimic human behavior? That's the existential crisis at the heart of emotional numbness. The question of whether your consciousness is even authentic, or if you're just a collection of learned responses with no genuine self underneath. Now we arrive at perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of feeling nothing. It's not the relief you'd expect. You might think that not feeling emotional pain would be a superpower. No heartbreak, no anxiety, no existential dread. Just smooth, untroubled existence. But here's the brutal truth. Emotional numbness doesn't just remove negative emotions. It removes all of them. And when you can't feel bad, you also can't feel good. No pain also means no joy. No anxiety also means no excitement. No grief also means no love. You become emotionally symmetrical, equal amounts of nothing in all directions. And that creates a strange form of suffering that people who feel normally have trouble understanding. The suffering of absence itself. Imagine you're hungry but you've lost your sense of taste. You can eat food. You understand intellectually that your body needs nutrition. But every meal is cardboard. Nothing satisfies. Nothing delights. You go through the motions of eating because you're supposed to, but there's no pleasure in it. That's what life becomes when you're emotionally numb. You go through the motions, relationships, achievements, experiences, but nothing lands. Nothing satisfies. Nothing feels like it matters. You get the promotion you've been working toward for years and you feel nothing. Just a vague sense that you should feel something and confusion about why you don't. You're in bed with someone you're supposed to love and you feel nothing. Just awareness that your body is going through motions, that you're performing intimacy without experiencing connection. You stand at a breathtaking vista that should inspire awe and you feel nothing. Just cognitive recognition that yes, this is objectively beautiful, and frustration that the beauty doesn't reach you. This creates a perverse longing, a hunger for feeling that becomes more intense precisely because it can't be satisfied. You start chasing experiences that might break through the numbness. Some people turn to risk-taking behavior, extreme sports, intense physical sensations, anything that might generate a feeling strong enough to pierce the fog. Others go in the opposite direction. They probe at their own numbness like poking at a wound to see if it still hurts. They might seek out sad movies, tragic stories, intense music, not because they enjoy these things but because they're desperately testing whether they can still feel anything at all. And occasionally something breaks through. A moment of genuine emotion, usually something extreme. Rage, terror, profound grief. And in that moment, even though the emotion is painful, there's almost a sense of relief. Finally, proof that you're still human. Proof that something inside you still works. But then it fades again. The numbness returns like fog rolling back in. And you're left with the memory of feeling, which somehow makes the emptiness even more pronounced. Here's the paradox. The people around you might envy your calm. They might look at your life and think, they never seem stressed. They never fall apart. They never let things get to them. They don't realize that you trade everything to be able to fall apart. That the ability to be hurt, to be overwhelmed, to feel too much, that's not a curse. That's the sign that you're alive. The absence of suffering isn't peace. Sometimes it's just death by 1,000 non-feelings. A slow erosion of your sense of aliveness until you're not sure if you're living a life or just simulating one. Let me tell you about Sarah. Not her real name, but her story is real, a composite of multiple accounts from people experiencing profound emotional numbness. Sarah is 32. She has a good job, a nice apartment, friends who care about her. From the outside, her life looks stable. Successful even. She's the person her friends call in crisis because she always knows what to say and never freaks out. Last year, Sarah's father died suddenly. Heart attack. No warning. She got the call at work. Took the rest of the day off. Made arrangements for the funeral. Called her siblings. Organized everything with remarkable efficiency. At the funeral, she stood at the front and delivered a eulogy that made everyone cry. She talked about her father's kindness, his bad jokes, the way he used to make pancakes every Sunday morning. She spoke about how much she'd miss him. And she felt nothing. Not nothing in the sense of being strong or holding it together. Nothing in the sense of a complete absence of emotional response. She watched her mother sob. She watched her brother's hands shake as he tried to read a poem. She saw the genuine grief on everyone's faces. And she felt like an alien observing human mourning rituals from the outside. She knew she should be crying. She'd loved her father, at least she had memories that suggested love, warmth, connection. But trying to access those feelings was like trying to remember a dream after waking up. She knew something had been there once, but she couldn't touch it anymore. The worst part came after when people hugged her and said, "You're being so strong." Because she wasn't being strong. She was just absent. She went home that night and sat on her couch in the dark, trying to force herself to feel something. She looked at pictures of her father. She played his favorite music. She tried to cry. Nothing. Just a low-level panic that something fundamental was broken inside her. That whatever makes a person human had been surgically removed from her without her noticing, and now she was just going through the motions of a life without any of the internal experience that's supposed to animate it. Sarah started going to therapy. The therapist asked her to describe her feelings. She couldn't. The therapist asked what emotions came up when she talked about her father. She said, "I don't know. Should I feel sad? I think I should feel sad." The therapist asked when she'd first noticed this numbness. Sarah couldn't point to a specific moment. It had happened gradually, she thought. Maybe starting in high school when things got difficult at home. Maybe in college when she learned that not caring made it easier to function. Maybe in her first relationship when vulnerability felt too dangerous. She'd become so good at shutting down her emotional responses that she'd forgotten how to turn them back on. The dimmer switch had broken in the off position. Now Sarah moves through her days performing a version of herself. She goes on dates and says the right things, but feels no spark, no chemistry, no connection. She meets friends for drinks and laughs at their jokes, but it's mechanical. She knows when laughter is appropriate, so she produces it. At night, she lies in bed and wonders if this is it. If this flat, gray, emotionally silent existence is just what being an adult is. Or if everyone else is secretly feeling things, experiencing depth and richness and connection, while she's locked out, pressing her face against the glass. The calm you'd see if you met Sarah isn't zen. It isn't peace. It's not even control. It's just emptiness that's learned to smile convincingly. So now let's sit with the really uncomfortable questions. What if you're not as different from Sarah as you think? What if the emotions you think you're feeling are just well-practiced performances? Social scripts you've learned so thoroughly that you've mistaken them for authentic experience? How would you know the difference? Think about the last time you said, "I love you," to someone. Were you feeling love in that moment? Some specific, identifiable internal experience? Or were you saying words in a context where those words are expected? Think about the last time you were happy. Can you point to the happiness? Can you isolate it from your thoughts about being happy, your performance of happiness, your cognitive recognition that this is a situation in which happiness is appropriate? This is the existential crisis embedded in emotional numbness. Once you've seen how thoroughly people can simulate emotional experience without feeling it, you start to question whether anyone is really feeling anything, or if we're all just very sophisticated actors who've forgotten we're acting. Neuroscientists and philosophers have been grappling with this for years. They call it the hard problem of consciousness. The question of whether subjective experience is real or just an illusion generated by information processing. When you feel sad, are you experiencing sadness as some kind of distinct phenomenon? Or is your brain just activating certain neural patterns, and you're labeling that activation sadness because you've learned that's what you're supposed to call it? People who are emotionally numb are forced to confront this question directly. They can't take emotional experience for granted. They have to actively wonder, is there supposed to be something more than what I'm experiencing? Am I missing something, or is everyone else just better at pretending something is there? And here's where it gets really disturbing. What if emotional numbness isn't a disorder? What if it's just what happens when you're honest about the fundamental emptiness of subjective experience? What if the people who feel deeply are just better at lying to themselves? Or conversely, what if emotional numbness is a kind of living death? What if the ability to feel, really feel even when it hurts, is the only thing that makes consciousness worth having, and people like Sarah are trapped in a gray purgatory where they're technically alive but experientially dead? There's no easy answer here. But the question itself is important because it forces us to examine what we value about being conscious beings. Is it better to feel intensely and suffer, or to feel nothing and never suffer? Is it better to have authentic emotional responses that might be overwhelming, or carefully controlled performances that keep you functional? Is it better to be vulnerable to pain or protected by numbness? Most people, when they really think about it, choose feeling over numbness. They recognize that emotional pain is the price of admission for emotional joy. That you can't selectively numb. When you shut down the bad, you shut down everything. But for people trapped in emotional numbness, that choice isn't available. They're not choosing the safety of disconnection over the risk of feeling. They've simply lost access to feeling altogether. And they'd give anything to get it back. We started with a simple observation. Some people appear calm but feel nothing inside. But now you understand that this isn't simple at all. It's one of the most complex and painful psychological experiences a person can have. To be emotionally numb isn't to be at peace. It's to be exiled from your own humanity. It's to watch life happen through a layer of glass that you can't break through. It's to perform the role of yourself so convincingly that everyone believes you're there, while you know that some essential part of you has vanished. The person sitting across from you at dinner, the one who seems so calm, so collected, so admirably stable, they might not be okay. They might be drowning in emptiness, desperately searching for any feeling that might prove they're still alive. And they'll never tell you. Because they've learned that their numbness makes other people uncomfortable. They've learned to hide it behind competence, behind stability, behind the very calm that's actually a symptom of their distress. So here's what you should take from this. Calm isn't always what it seems. Stability might be disconnection. Composure might be absence. And if you recognize yourself in this description, If you've spent this entire video thinking, "Oh God, that's me," then know this: emotional numbness isn't permanent. It's a protective response that your nervous system learned. And what was learned can, with time and work and often professional help, be unlearned. You can find your way back to feeling. It's hard. It's terrifying. It requires deliberately lowering the defenses that have kept you safe for so long. But on the other side of that terror is something worth fighting for: the ability to be moved by beauty, to be hurt by loss, to be connected by love, to feel the full spectrum of being human even when it's painful. Because the alternative, the calm emptiness, the performance without substance, the living death of feeling nothing, that's not safety. That's just a slower way to disappear. The question isn't whether you can survive without feelings. Clearly you can. Sarah survives. Millions of people trapped in emotional numbness survive. The question is, do you want to just survive? Or do you want to be alive? And only you can answer that.